The makeup felt heavy on Marcus's skin as he sat alone in his cramped apartment, perfecting the wide smile that would disguise his own fading dreams. An aspiring actor works as a clown. It wasn't the role he'd imagined for himself when he'd arrived in Los Angeles 5 years ago, with nothing but headshots and hope. But it paid the rent, most months anyway. He carefully traced the exaggerated red smile over his lips, his hands steadier than his heart. Outside, the February rain tapped against the window like impatient fingers, a constant reminder of the world moving forward while he remained stuck. His agent hadn't called in weeks. The last audition had ended with the same polite rejection. "We'll be in touch." They never were. Marcus leaned closer to the mirror, studying his transformation. The person staring back at him, this colorful, cheerful stranger, bore no resemblance to the man who stayed up late reading scripts no one would ever cast him in. The white face paint covered the dark circles under his eyes, evidence of late nights working on monologues for auditions that led nowhere. The blue diamonds around his eyes hid the disappointment. The red nose concealed his shame. His phone buzzed. The calendar reminder, Robert's residence, 2 p.m. Birthday party, 10-year-old boy. With practiced precision, Marcus completed his makeup, the bright colors a stark contrast to the gray day outside. He adjusted his rainbow wig, straightened his polka-dotted bow tie, and gathered his supplies. Balloon animals, magic tricks, jokes worn thin from repetition. Each item went into a battered duffel bag that once held scripts and acting notes from his days at community theater. The drive to Beverly Hills took 40 minutes, each mile widening the gap between his reality and the life he dreamed of. Mansions rose from manicured lawns like monuments to success, mocking the peeling paint of his 15-year-old Honda. Rain streaked down the windshield as Marcus rehearsed his routine, pushing away thoughts of the commercial audition he'd failed yesterday. The casting director had barely looked at him. "Too ordinary," she'd said not unkindly, just matter-of-factly, as if diagnosing a common ailment. The Roberts residence loomed ahead, a sprawling modern structure of glass and concrete that probably cost more than Marcus would earn in several lifetimes. He parked on the street, gathering his resolve along with his supplies. For the next 2 hours, he wouldn't be Marcus Chen, the failing actor whose parents back in Seattle still believed he was on the verge of his big break. He would be Bubbles the clown, bringing joy to children who had everything except perhaps attention. A housekeeper answered the door, her expression neutral as she assessed him. "The entertainment," Marcus said, forcing brightness into his voice. "For Ethan's party?" She nodded, stepping aside. "They're in the back." Through the kitchen, the house was a cathedral to minimalism. White walls, sparse furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than his annual rent. Marcus followed the sound of children's voices, his oversized shoes squeaking on the polished concrete floors. The backyard was a child's dream come to life. Despite the unseasonable rain, the covered patio had been transformed into a carnival, with games, a cotton candy machine, and a small petting zoo. About a dozen children ran around, their energy untamed despite the adults who hovered nearby, most absorbed in their phones. "You must be the clown." Marcus turned to find a woman in her early 40s, dressed in yoga clothes that suggested both comfort and expense. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, ma'am. Bubbles at your service." He gave a dramatic bow that made his rainbow wig bounce. "Great. Ethan's over there." She gestured vaguely toward a corner of the patio where a small boy sat alone, away from the other children. "Try to get him involved? He's been difficult today." Her phone chimed and she glanced at it, attention already diverted. "I'll be inside if you need anything." Marcus watched her retreat into the house before turning his attention to the birthday boy. Ethan sat cross-legged on a cushion, intently focused on a small notebook in his lap. Unlike the other children in their designer clothes and perfectly styled hair, Ethan had a rumpled quality. His dark hair fell across his forehead, his Batman t-shirt was slightly too large, and his sneakers were scuffed. Taking a deep breath, Marcus approached, his smile wide beneath the painted one. "Well, hello there, birthday boy," he called out, his voice pitched to carry the practiced cheer of Bubbles. "I hear someone's turning the big one 0 today." Ethan looked up, his expression serious beyond his years. His eyes, dark and assessing, studied Marcus with an intensity that felt almost uncomfortable. "I'm drawing," he said simply, neither welcoming nor dismissing. Marcus crouched down, careful to give the boy space. "Mind if I see? I love art." After a moment's hesitation, Ethan turned the notebook. Instead of the superhero doodles Marcus expected, the page revealed a detailed sketch of the party itself, but from a strange angle. as if viewed from above. The children were captured in motion, their expressions ranging from excitement to boredom. In the corner, separated from the group, was a small figure that must be Ethan himself, observing rather than participating. "Wow," Marcus said, genuinely impressed. "You've got a real talent there." Ethan shrugged, but Marcus caught the slight lift at the corner of his mouth. "I like to watch people. Mom says it's creepy. I don't think it's creepy at all. It's observant. That's what directors do, you know? They watch everything and then tell the story they see." The boy's eyes lit up. "Like Steven Spielberg?" "Exactly like Spielberg." Marcus settled onto the cushion beside Ethan, temporarily abandoning his planned routine. "Did you know he started making little movies when he was about your age?" Ethan shook his head, fully engaged now. "Really? With what?" "Just his dad's 8mm camera. Nothing fancy, but he paid attention to everything, just like you do." Marcus gestured to the notebook. "That's the first step to being a great storyteller." For the next hour, Marcus forgot he was Bubbles the clown. He and Ethan talked about movies. The boy's knowledge was astounding for someone so young, and how stories were told through camera angles and actor choices. When Marcus finally remembered his job and offered to make balloon animals, Ethan shook his head. "Can you show me how you do your makeup instead? It's like a transformation, right? Like special effects." Marcus hesitated. His makeup kit was a personal space, a transition between his real self and his performing persona. But there was something in Ethan's earnest request that he couldn't refuse. "Tell you what," he said, "let me entertain your guest for a bit, and then I'll show you the tricks of the trade, okay?" Ethan nodded, and for the first time since Marcus arrived, the boy smiled, a genuine gap-toothed grin that transformed his solemn face. The party proceeded as most did. Marcus performed his standard routine. Magic tricks that delighted despite their simplicity. Balloon animals twisted into existence with practiced hands. Jokes that drew obligatory laughter. Parents took photos, more focused on capturing moments than experiencing them. But throughout it all, Ethan watched him with unwavering attention, studying his movements, his timing, the way he engaged with his audience. When the time came for cake, Marcus stood back, his role momentarily suspended. He watched as Ethan blew out the candles, his eyes closed tight in silent wish-making. The other children crowded around, suddenly interested in the birthday boy now that cake was involved. Adults called for photos, arranging Ethan with his parents. His mother, the yoga-clothed woman from earlier, and his father, a tall man in a polo shirt who had arrived midway through the party, constantly checking his watch. "Make-a-wish, sport," his father said, ruffling Ethan's hair with absent affection. Marcus saw something flicker across Ethan's face, a longing so familiar it made his chest ache. How many times had he himself smiled for cameras while wishing for something else entirely? After cake, as children dispersed to play and adults retreated to conversations, Ethan found Marcus again. "You promised," he said, no accusation in his voice, just a reminder. "I did indeed." Marcus led him to a quiet corner of the patio, setting down his duffel bag. "The secret to a good transformation," he said, pulling out his makeup kit, "is understanding who you're becoming." He showed Ethan his kit, the grease paint, the brushes, the techniques he'd learned through years of theater classes and YouTube tutorials. The boy listened with rapt attention, asking questions that revealed a mind constantly piecing together how things worked, how stories were constructed. "Why did you become a clown?" Ethan asked, catching Marcus off guard. The question pierced through the character of Bubbles, reaching directly to Marcus. For a moment, he considered deflecting with humor or a simplified answer. But something about Ethan's direct gaze made dishonesty impossible. "I'm actually an actor," he admitted, lowering his voice. "Or trying to be. The clown gigs pay the bills while I audition for real roles." Ethan nodded, processing this information with the same seriousness he applied to everything. Like a secret identity. "Something like that." Marcus smiled, touched by the boy's framing of his situation. "I bet you're a good actor," Ethan said. "You made Joey laugh, and he never laughs at anything." "Well, thank you. That might be the nicest review I've ever gotten." As the party wound down, Marcus packed his supplies, preparing to slip away as he always did. Children's parties were transient moments of joy he provided before disappearing, leaving no trace except perhaps a few balloon animals that would be popped or deflated by morning. He was zipping his duffel bag when he felt a tug on his sleeve. Ethan stood there, notebook in hand. "I made this for you," he said, tearing out a page and handing it to Marcus. It was a sketch of Marcus, not as Bubbles the clown, but somehow as himself beneath the makeup. The drawing captured something vulnerable and hopeful in his eyes that Marcus thought he'd hidden away. "This is amazing," Marcus said, genuinely moved. "Thank you, Ethan. Mom says I have to take a picture with you before you go." Ethan rolled his eyes, but there was a reluctant smile on his face. Marcus posed with the birthday boy, his painted smile matching his real one, for the first time that day. Ethan's mother snapped a few photos on her phone, thanked Marcus perfunctorily, and handed him an envelope with his payment. As he walked to his car, Marcus heard footsteps behind him. Turning, he found Ethan running after him, slightly out of breath. "Will you come back next year?" the boy asked. "For my 11th birthday?" The question caught Marcus by surprise. Children rarely remembered the entertainers at their parties from one year to the next. "If your parents hire me, sure," he said. Ethan nodded decisively. "They will. I'll make them." Marcus laughed. "I'll look forward to it then. Next time, maybe you could come as yourself," Ethan said, not as Bubbles. Something about the simple request touched Marcus deeply. "I'd like that," he said softly. As he drove away from the mansion, the rain had stopped, and thin sunlight broke through the clouds. The envelope of cash would cover his overdue electric bill, maybe with enough left over for a week's groceries. But it was the folded sketch in his pocket that felt like the real payment, a reminder that sometimes, beneath the makeup and the performance, someone still saw him. Marcus had no way of knowing then how significant that rainy afternoon would become, not just for Ethan, but for himself. How one connection, one moment of being truly seen, could alter the course of two lives. 15 years passed like scenes changing in a film, some lingering in slow motion, others rushing by in a blur. Marcus stood outside Paramount Studios, the California sun beating down on his shoulders. At 38, his face had gained character lines that casting directors now found appealing for certain roles. Character actor, that's what he'd become. Not the leading man he'd once dreamed of being, but a working actor nonetheless, with a modest apartment in Los Feliz and a resume that had slowly accumulated respectable credits. Television mostly, a recurring role on a crime procedural, a memorable guest spot on a sitcom, commercials that paid surprisingly well. He'd abandoned the clown makeup years ago, though sometimes he still dreamed of rainbow wigs and balloon animals, of children's laughter and parents who barely noticed him. His agent had been cryptic about this meeting. "A director specifically requested you," she'd said. "Big project, potential game changer." Marcus checked his reflection in his phone screen, adjusted his collar, and walked through the gate with a confidence he'd earned through years of rejection and resilience. The security guard directed him to a bungalow on the lot, where a production assistant greeted him with the kind of deference reserved for those visiting important people. "Mr. Chen, thank you for coming. Mr. Roberts is excited to meet with you." The name registered vaguely, but Marcus couldn't place it. He followed the PA through the bungalow to a small conference room where a man stood with his back turned, studying storyboards pinned to the wall. "Mr. Roberts, Marcus Chen is here," the PA announced before quietly disappearing. When the man turned, Marcus felt the peculiar sensation of time folding in on itself. The face was older, the boyish roundness replaced by defined features, but the eyes, those observant, serious eyes, were unmistakable. "Ethan." The name escaped before Marcus could process the impossibility of the moment. The young director, now in his mid-20s, smiled, and in that smile, Marcus saw echoes of the gap-toothed boy with the notebook. "You remember me?" "Of course Marcus stopped, trying to reconcile the solemn 10-year-old with this confident young man whose name he now recognized from film festival buzz and industry chatter. Ethan Roberts, the wunderkind director whose debut film had critics comparing him to early Spielberg. "Please sit." Ethan gestured to a chair. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be great," Marcus said, still trying to gather his thoughts. Ethan poured water from a carafe, his movements deliberate and assured. "I've been following your career," he said. "That arc on City Lights was incredible work." "Thank you." Marcus accepted the water glass. "I've been following yours too. Your film, The Observer, it was brilliant." Ethan's expression brightened. "You saw it?" "Of course. I had no idea that was you until just now." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with the strange intimacy of a connection that had lain dormant for 15 years. "I never forgot that birthday party," Ethan finally said. "The clown who talked to me about directing instead of just making balloon animals." Marcus smiled at the memory. "You were drawing everyone from above, like a director's eye view. That conversation changed everything for me." Ethan sat across from Marcus, leaning forward slightly. You were the first adult who didn't treat my interest in filmmaking like a cute phase. You took it seriously. You were a serious kid. Marcus sipped his water. With serious talent. Ethan laughed softly. I was lonely. My parents were... He paused, searching for diplomatic words. Preoccupied with their own lives. That party was their attempt to make up for never being present. They hired the best clown, the best petting zoo, the best everything, except they couldn't be the best parents. The candor surprised Marcus. And now? He asked gently. But not better. Time gives perspective. My father actually helped finance my first short film, once he realized I wasn't going to follow him into investment banking. Ethan shrugged. But I didn't ask you here to talk about my family dynamics. Why did you ask me here? Marcus set down his glass, curiosity overcoming his initial shock. Ethan stood and walked to the storyboards on the wall. I'm directing my second feature. It's a personal story in many ways. He gestured to the artwork. A story about connections that shape us, even when we don't recognize their importance until years later. Marcus rose to examine the storyboards, which depicted scenes from what appeared to be a drama about an actor struggling to find his place in a world that valued appearance over substance. It's about a man who performs for others while hiding his true self. Ethan continued, until he meets someone who sees beyond the performance. The parallels weren't subtle. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. And you want me to play the lead, Ethan said simply. The role was written for you. Marcus turned, certain he'd misheard. The lead? You're an incredible actor, Marcus. You always were. I've watched everything you've done. The depth you bring to even the smallest roles. It's exactly what this character needs. But I'm not a leading man, Marcus said automatically, voicing the limitation he'd long ago accepted. I'm a character actor. Ethan's expression grew serious. This character has character. He's not a superhero or a romantic ideal. He's a man with disappointments and hopes and complexity. Like you showed me that day. There's the face we paint on for the world, and there's what's underneath. Marcus looked back at the storyboards, trying to process the opportunity being presented. Why me? There are plenty of established names who could open a film. Because 15 years ago, you were kind to a lonely kid when you didn't have to be. Because you showed me that art comes from observation and empathy. Ethan paused. And because you're the right actor for this role, I've known that since I wrote it. The conference room seemed to shrink around them, the moment expanding to fill the space. Marcus had spent so many years adjusting his expectations downward, accepting the modest success he'd achieved as more than most actors ever got. The possibility of something more felt almost dangerous to consider. Can I read the script? He asked finally. Ethan smiled and reached for a bound screenplay on the table. I was hoping you'd ask. Over the next 2 hours, as the afternoon sun moved across the bungalow windows, Marcus read the screenplay titled Beneath the Paint. The story followed a middle-aged actor who paid his bills performing as various costume characters, clowns, mascots, superhero impersonators, while his dreams of meaningful acting work slowly faded. When he befriends a young woman directing her first indie film, both their lives change as they help each other find the courage to create authentic art. The character was him, but also not him, a parallel version whose life had taken similar turns but faced different crossroads. The writing was honest, sometimes painfully so, but also deeply compassionate. When Marcus looked up from the final page, he found Ethan watching him with that same intense observation he'd had as a child. It's beautiful, Marcus said, his voice slightly hoarse. The story, the character, it's so real, Ethan supplied. Yes, real. Marcus closed the script carefully. Are you sure you want me? This could be a breakthrough film for you. The studios will want someone with more name recognition. The studios aren't financing this one. I am. Ethan leaned back in his chair. That gives me casting freedom. You're personally financing a feature film just to cast me? Marcus couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. Ethan smiled. I'm financing a feature film because I believe in the story. Casting you is just a bonus. He paused. Consider it repayment for an afternoon that changed my life. Ethan, I just talked to you about movies. I didn't do anything special. You saw me, Ethan said simply. When most adults looked through me, you really saw me. The words hung in the air between them, carrying the weight of years and choices and random connections that turned out to be anything but random. Marcus thought about the sketch Ethan had given him 15 years ago, the one that had somehow captured what was beneath the clown makeup. He'd kept it all these years, framed on his wall as a reminder that sometimes someone sees the truth of you. When would filming start? Marcus asked, his decision already made. Ethan's face broke into a genuine smile. 6 weeks. Pre-production is already underway. I'll need to talk to my agent. Work out scheduling with the procedural. They're shooting my episodes for next season in the fall. We'll work around it, Ethan promised. Whatever it takes. As they shook hands to seal the agreement, Marcus felt something shift inside him, a recalibration of possibility. At 38, he thought his path was set, his ceiling established. Now suddenly walls were moving, ceilings lifting. I've held on to something, Ethan said, reaching into his desk drawer. I thought you might want it back. He handed Marcus a slightly yellowed photograph. Marcus in full clown makeup, arm around a solemn 10-year-old Ethan. The birthday party. The beginning. Your mother took this. Marcus remembered studying the image. In it, he could see the fatigue behind his painted smile, the uncertainty that plagued him then. She didn't remember you at all when I mentioned you years later, Ethan said. But I did. I remembered everything. Marcus looked up from the photo to find Ethan watching him with the same intense focus he'd had as a child. The gaze of someone who observed deeply, who saw beyond surfaces to the humanity beneath. Thank you, Marcus said, meaning it for more than just the photograph. No, Ethan replied. Thank you for being the first person who made me believe I could tell stories that mattered. As Marcus left the studio lot that afternoon, the California sun casting long shadows across the asphalt, he felt the peculiar sensation of his life turning a corner he hadn't known was there. Behind him lay years of struggle, of compromise, of adjusted dreams. Ahead stretched something new, not the future he'd imagined at 23, fresh-faced and naive, but perhaps something more meaningful. All because of a rainy afternoon, a birthday party, and a boy who had seen past the painted smile to the person beneath. Touched the set of Beneath the Paint, hummed with the organized chaos of a film in production. Lights were adjusted, camera tracks laid, actors huddled with script supervisors going over last-minute changes. In the center of it all stood Ethan Roberts, now 26, conferring quietly with his cinematographer. Marcus watched from the edge of the soundstage, already in costume and makeup for the day's scenes. The character, named Sam in the film, wore a faded t-shirt from a canceled TV show and had the weary posture of someone who had been carrying disappointment for too long. No clown makeup today. That scene had been filmed last week, an emotional sequence that had left Marcus drained but exhilarated. 3 weeks into production, and already the buzz was building. Someone had leaked dailies online, probably intentionally, Marcus suspected, and film blogs were picking up on the character actor in a revelatory leading role, Angle. His agent had called yesterday with news of interest from casting directors who had previously overlooked him. You ready? Ethan appeared at his side, clipboard in hand. Today's scenes are pivotal. Marcus nodded. Sam finally stands up for himself. Not just that, he reclaims his belief in his own value. Ethan flipped through his notes. I want to try something different with the blocking. Instead of retreating when Harris criticizes your work, I want you to take a step forward. Small but deliberate, showing he's finding his courage, Marcus said, understanding immediately. Exactly. Ethan smiled. You always get it. They walked together toward the set, a recreated casting office where Sam would confront a director who had humiliated him years before. The scene represented a turning point in the character's journey, the moment when years of accepting mistreatment finally crystallized into resistance. Places everyone, the assistant director called. Rehearsal in 5. Ethan paused before taking his position behind the monitors. Marcus, he said quietly, this scene is difficult. It's asking you to access some painful places. Marcus knew what Ethan was referring to. They'd talked extensively during pre-production about their experiences in the industry. The callous rejections, the casual cruelty masked as professional feedback. This scene distilled much of that shared understanding. I've got it, Marcus assured him. Some memories are still pretty fresh. Ethan nodded. Use them. But remember, Sam finds his voice here. So it's not just the pain, it's the liberation from it. As Ethan moved away, Marcus settled into character, letting his posture shift subtly, allowing Sam's history to inhabit his body. Around him, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, creating the illusion that would become reality on screen. Action! The scene unfolded with raw intensity. Harris, played by a veteran character actor known for his intimidating presence, dismissed Sam's audition with casual brutality. But instead of accepting the humiliation as he had in their previous encounter years before, Sam found the courage to speak truth. "You don't remember me, do you?" Marcus delivered the line with quiet control. "I auditioned for you 8 years ago. You said I was too ordinary for the camera to love." He took that small step forward that Ethan had suggested, a subtle physical manifestation of reclaimed dignity. "I believed you. For years I believed that assessment defined my worth." Another step. "But here's what I've learned. Ordinary isn't a failure. Ordinary is the raw material of extraordinary stories. Ordinary is what connects us." The scene built to its emotional peak as Sam articulated what he had come to understand. That his value as an actor, as an artist, as a human being was not determined by industry gatekeepers, but by his own commitment to truth. "Cut," Ethan called, stepping onto the set. "Beautiful." "That was beautiful, both of you." The crew moved into position for the next setup as Ethan conferred with the actors. "Marcus, that last beat, the vulnerability mixed with strength, that's exactly what Sam needed. Can we try one more with even more of that tension? The years of suppressed anger finally finding expression, but controlled, deliberate?" "Absolutely." Marcus nodded, still half in character, feeling the emotional current of the scene running through him. They reset, and in the quiet moment before action, Marcus caught sight of a figure at the edge of the soundstage. A woman in her 60s, elegant in a simple black dress, watching with intense focus. Something about her struck him as familiar, though he couldn't place her. The scene played again, deeper this time, the emotional current stronger. When Ethan called cut, the crew broke into spontaneous applause, a rare occurrence that signaled everyone had witnessed something special. "That's it," Ethan said, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "That's the one." As the crew prepared for the next setup, Marcus noticed Ethan speaking with the mysterious woman. Their conversation seemed animated but intimate, and he saw Ethan gesture toward him several times. After a few minutes, they approached together. "Marcus, there's someone I'd like you to meet." Ethan said, "This is my mother, Eleanor Roberts." The woman extended her hand, and Marcus recognized her then. The yoga-clothed mother from the birthday party, now 15 years older, her face softer with age but her eyes sharper with awareness. "Mr. Chen," she said, "I've been watching your work today. It's extraordinary." "Thank you," Marcus replied, slightly unsettled by the unexpected compliment from someone who had barely noticed him years ago. "It's a privilege to work with your son. He's a remarkable director." Eleanor smiled, a hint of sadness touching her expression. "Yes, he is, though I can't take credit for that talent. If anything, it developed despite my parenting, not because of it." The candor surprised him. Ethan touched his mother's arm gently. "Mom, we've talked about this. The past is past." She nodded. "I know, but seeing you now, seeing your vision come to life, I needed to acknowledge the people who supported that vision when I didn't." She turned back to Marcus. "Ethan has told me about your kindness to him, about how you spoke to him as a person, not just as a child to be entertained." Marcus shifted uncomfortably under her direct gaze. "I just recognized a fellow artist. In a 10-year-old, when his own mother saw only a quiet child who didn't fit neatly into her planned life." Eleanor's eyes were bright with emotion. "You saw what I missed, Mr. Chen, and for that, I'm grateful." Before Marcus could respond, the assistant director called for the next setup. Ethan excused himself to address a question from the cinematographer, leaving Marcus momentarily alone with Eleanor. "He kept that sketch, you know," she said as they watched Ethan work. "The one he drew of you. All these years, I kept the one he gave me too," Marcus admitted. Eleanor smiled. "Some connections transcend time, don't they? Some moments leave marks we don't even recognize until years later." As she moved away to watch from the sidelines, Marcus felt the strange symmetry of the moment. How lives intersected, separated, reconnected in patterns no one could predict. How kindness planted seeds that grew in unexpected directions. The rest of the day passed in the intense focus of filmmaking, scene after scene bringing Sam's journey to life. By wrap time, Marcus felt the pleasant exhaustion that came from giving everything to a performance that mattered. In his trailer, removing the remains of Sam's day from his face, Marcus studied his reflection. At 38, his face showed the lines of disappointment, but also of perseverance. Not so different from Sam, really. Both had endured the gap between dreams and reality. Both had found ways to keep moving forward despite setbacks. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Ethan entered, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. "Peace offering," he said, handing one to Marcus. "I know it ran long today. Worth every minute." Marcus replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. That confrontation scene, it felt right. It was perfect. Ethan sat in the small chair opposite the makeup counter. You brought exactly what Sam needed, the dignity beneath the hurt. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the crew breaking down equipment filtering through the trailer walls. Your mother seems different from what I remember, Marcus finally said. Ethan's expression softened. She is different. We both are. After my father left when I was 16, she had to reconstruct her idea of what life was supposed to be. It wasn't easy for either of us. He took a sip of coffee. But we found our way back to each other. She came to every screening of my short films, even the terrible early ones. People change, Marcus observed. Some for the better. Like Sam, Ethan said. Like both of us. The parallel wasn't lost on Marcus. The film they were making, about an actor finding his voice, his value, mirrored his own journey in so many ways. And Ethan's journey from lonely child to assured director had its own arc of growth and discovery. I brought something to show you, Ethan said, reaching into his pocket. He unfolded a yellowed piece of paper, careful with its fragility. I thought it might help with tomorrow's scenes. It was the sketch, the one Ethan had drawn of Marcus at the birthday party. The likeness was impressive for a 10-year-old artist. But what struck Marcus most was what Ethan had captured. The humanity beneath the clown makeup, the longing in the eyes that no grease paint could hide. You saw me, Marcus said softly, echoing Ethan's words from their first meeting at Paramount. We saw each other, Ethan corrected. Two people who didn't quite fit in the spaces they'd been assigned. As Marcus looked at the drawing, he felt a strange compression of time. How 15 years could fold into a single moment of recognition. How lives could diverge and reconverge in patterns that only made sense in retrospect. Keep it, Ethan said, pressing the sketch into Marcus's hand. A reminder of where we started. And where we're going. Outside the trailer, the sounds of the film crew diminished as equipment was stored and cars departed. Tomorrow they would return, continue building the story frame by frame. But in this quiet moment between two people connected by chance and choice and creativity, something expanded beyond the boundaries of the film they were making. Something true, something that had begun with an aspiring actor working as a clown and a birthday boy who would grow up to become a famous director. Two souls who had seen each other when no one else was looking. The premiere of Beneath the Paint transformed the historic Egyptian theater in Los Angeles into a nexus of anticipation. Red carpet, flashing cameras, the controlled chaos of a major film event, all for a deeply personal indie drama that had defied expectations at every turn. Marcus stood at the edge of the commotion, watching as Ethan fielded questions from entertainment reporters with the graceful confidence that had become his hallmark. At 27, Ethan Roberts had already established himself as a director whose second feature had generated the kind of pre-release buzz that studios spent millions trying to manufacture. Mr. Chen, over here! A photographer gestured urgently, and Marcus moved into position, still unaccustomed to this level of attention. The past year had transformed his life in ways he was still processing. The film had been completed on schedule, despite challenges with weather and budget constraints. Early screenings for industry insiders had generated whispers of award consideration. His agent now called daily with offers that would have been unimaginable 18 months ago. Marcus, a few words about working with Ethan Roberts? A reporter thrust a microphone toward him, and Marcus composed his thoughts. Ethan has a rare gift for truth, he said. He creates spaces where actors can be vulnerable and authentic. It's been the most rewarding creative experience of my career. More questions followed, about his preparation for the role, about the parallels to his own life, about what came next. Marcus answered with the thoughtful consideration that had become his public persona, neither hiding from nor overstating the film's autobiographical elements. They're saying Oscar buzz, the reporter pressed. For you and for the film. How does that feel? Overwhelming, Marcus admitted. But the real reward has been the work itself. Creating something honest with people I respect. As the interview concluded, Marcus felt a hand on his shoulder. Ethan had appeared beside him, resplendent in a tailored suit that maintained his distinctive aesthetic, formal but with creative touches that marked him as an artist. They need us inside, Ethan said. It's almost time. Together they walked the remainder of the red carpet, pausing for the requisite photos that would appear in entertainment publications tomorrow. The contrast between them, Ethan's youth and Marcus's seasoned presence, made for compelling images. visual shorthand for the film's intergenerational themes. In the theater lobby, Eleanor Roberts waited, elegant in midnight blue. Beside her stood a surprise. Marcus's parents, flown in from Seattle for the premiere. The sight of them, his father in his best suit, his mother clutching her purse with nervous excitement, brought a sudden tightness to Marcus's throat. "Mom, Dad," he embraced them both. "You made it. We wouldn't miss it," his father said, pride evident in his voice. "Our son, the leading man." The simple statement carried the weight of years, of phone calls where Marcus had downplayed rejections, of holidays spent assuring them that, yes, he was making progress, of their unwavering support even when his career seemed permanently stalled in minor roles. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," Ethan stepped forward. "I'm Ethan Roberts. Thank you for coming tonight." Marcus watched as his parents took in the young director, the wunderkind whose vision had provided the vehicle for their son's breakout performance. "Thank you," his mother said, her English slightly accented, "for seeing our son's talent." The simplicity of her gratitude touched something deep in both men. Ethan glanced at Marcus, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. "Your son saw me first," Ethan told them, 15 years ago when very few people did. Before more could be said, the theater doors opened and the crowd began moving inside. Marcus found himself seated between Ethan and his parents, with Eleanor on Ethan's other side. As the lights dimmed and the studio logos appeared on screen, Marcus felt the strange culmination of cycles, of dreams deferred and reclaimed, of connections lost and found. The film unfolded before them, the familiar story now woven into a coherent whole through Ethan's careful editing and vision. Marcus watched his own performance with the detached assessment of a professional, noting moments of truth alongside technical choices. But he also allowed himself to feel the emotional current of the story, Sam's journey from resignation to reclamation, from hiding behind costumes to standing in his own authentic voice. When the scene appeared, Sam in full clown makeup, connecting with a solemn child at a birthday party, Marcus heard his mother's soft intake of breath beside him. On screen, the moment unfolded with gentle power, the beginning of the change that would transform both characters' lives. By the time the credits rolled, the theater was hushed with the particular silence that follows storytelling that has touched something essential. Then, as if by collective decision, the audience rose in sustained applause. The after-party buzzed with industry players and genuine well-wishers. Critics cornered Ethan to discuss his visual choices. Casting directors who had once overlooked Marcus now sought his attention. Through it all, Marcus maintained a center of quiet gratitude, understanding that this moment, however sweet, was part of a longer journey rather than a destination. Near midnight, as the celebration continued around them, Marcus found a moment alone with Ethan on the rooftop terrace of the venue. The Los Angeles skyline sparkled below them, a carpet of light stretching to the horizon. "They're calling it a breakthrough," Ethan said, loosening his tie. "For both of us." Marcus nodded. "Does it feel like you expected? The success?" Ethan considered the question. "Not really. It feels quieter somehow. Less like fireworks and more like finding a door I've been looking for." "I know exactly what you mean." They stood in comfortable silence, two artists at different points in their careers, but connected by a shared understanding of what mattered beyond the accolades and attention. "I've been offered 3 films," Marcus finally said. "All leading roles." Ethan smiled. "About time they recognized what was always there." "What about you? What's next?" "I'm writing something new. A story about chosen family. The connections that save us when blood ties aren't enough." Ethan turned to face him directly. "I'd like you to be part of it if you're interested. Not the lead this time. There's a supporting character I think you'd bring something special to." The offer touched Marcus deeply. Not just the opportunity to work together again, but the recognition that their creative partnership transcended conventional hierarchies of star and director. "I'd be honored," he said simply. Below them, car doors slammed as early departures began. The industry moved quickly, already calculating the impact of tonight's reception, already looking toward the next premiere, the next discovery. But up here, in the quiet of shared accomplishment, 2 artists who had once been a lonely child and a struggling clown stood as equals. Creators who had found in each other the recognition that art, at its core, was about seeing and being seen. "Do you remember what you asked me?" Marcus said suddenly. "At that birthday party? You asked why I became a clown." Ethan nodded. "You said you were an actor trying to pay the bills." "I was, But looking back now, I think there was more to it. Marcus gazed out at the city lights. I think I was hiding. Behind the makeup, no one could see my disappointment, my fear of failure. And now? Ethan asked. Now I don't need to hide anymore. Marcus smiled. Neither of us does. The night air carried the hint of jasmine and city smog, that distinctive Los Angeles mixture of beauty and grit. In the distance, a siren wailed, then faded, life continuing its complicated dance around their moment of reflection. You know, Ethan said, when I was 10, I wished for something when I blew out those birthday candles. Mom, what was it? I wished that someday I'd make stories that mattered, that I'd find people who saw the world the way I did. Ethan glanced at him. I think that wish came true. Marcus thought about wishes and dreams, about paths taken and chances seized, about an aspiring actor who had worked as a clown and a birthday boy who had grown up to become a famous director. How neither could have predicted the ways their lives would intertwine, separate, reconnect. Some wishes do come true, he said softly, just not always in the ways we expect. Below them, the party continued, celebrating a film about seeing beyond surfaces to the authentic self beneath. Above them, stars pierced the Los Angeles haze, distant witnesses to two lives transformed by a simple act of recognition. Tomorrow would bring reviews and box office reports, new opportunities and challenges. The machinery of the industry would continue its relentless forward motion. But in this moment, on this rooftop, what mattered was the connection that had begun 15 years ago, with a sketch and a conversation. A connection that had grown into something neither could have imagined, but both had somehow always needed. Two souls who had seen each other. Two artists who had found in that seeing the courage to create truth.